Hello. Not too much. I literally just ran in the door from the workout. Right. Okay. A little bit, yeah. Um, Probably about 30. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool. Um, yeah, like I said, I wasn't. My hope isn't to try to come up with a polished podcast type of a platform by any means. I just figured that it's so valuable to talk with you guys on Wednesdays, and then, like I said yesterday on the phone, and then I spend the next 5 days maybe sending a text message or two or reminding somebody about an article that maybe was brought up, but other than that, I feel like the discussion just ceases, and it
Right.
sucks because I think we've got all of us have a lot that we want to at least hear, and a lot of us even have plenty of stuff that we want to say too. So just in an effort to keep the discussion going. My my question to you to kind of kick things off is we were talking on Wednesday about apprenticeship and just general practicing of learning, which is practical things, getting hands on, things like that. What do you feel like the culture of today? I feel like our safety mom centered culture is maybe a limiting factor for that apprenticeship. See, I guess what I'm thinking is we're so focused on safety. And when you start to have younger, inexperienced people do things, especially with their hands, you're
Yeah.
going to have mishaps. And so
Right.
that connection there is what I've been wrestling with and wondering if it's a culture wide and what's driving that need for safetyism. Why does everybody feel like that's the thing that needs to be prioritized the most?
I mean,
We weren't.
it probably just goes back to exactly what you said. It's just an effeminate trait that you want to insulate and protect, right?
Yeah, and it's not a that's not a wrong thing. That's not a bad thing just
Right.
in and of itself, but when it becomes the priority. See, that's what I don't remember if I had talked to you about this. I think I did. Or it was at Bums where I made the point because I heard it on a podcast that we prioritize safety and insurance and legal covering your ass and all of that stuff. We're so worried about the the mistakes that can happen, the pitfalls that we can fall into. I don't know. To me, it's just, especially as Christians, I don't know why we're so worried about being safe.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
think it's
antithesis of
part of it's
Christianity.
human. I mean, I think part of it is human nature. You know, there's that I guess, self-preservation, but I don't know. I don't know. I think it's, you know, a lot of that comes too with we kind of live in like a litigious society. So with an organization or, if you're doing something, you have to worry about the consequences if someone gets hurt because if no one ever looks at the cause of the accident as being themselves. They're always looking for some external thing to blame, you know.
It gets complicated because you can totally understand how if you're walking down the sidewalk minding your own business and somebody's German Shepherd chews your right arm off, um, you want some sort of recourse of action,
Sure.
and you know, you want some sort of. But again, I just take it biblically because it's almost like we're playing God and taking justice into our own hands. That's the entire tort system. The entire legal system is that idea that here we'll mete out the justice that's due, and we know what's best, and we can actually see the intentions, even though those can't ever be seen or touched or smelled with factual evidence. That you know, I feel like the justice system is doing God's bidding there too much, I guess is one way to put it.
That's funny. I
But
think I
that back,
literally
back to
heard that exact thing on a podcast the other day. An exact equation between, you know, when the government is our God, then we do look to him to for the justice, you know, that we feel we're
sure,
due,
we've
and
made
I
the
think that
state.
is a good, yeah.
We have made the state our God, no doubt.
Yeah.
And that's where again, when people are wronged, they turn to the state to capture, to make things even again. And it's, I don't know, but back to the apprenticeship thing.
Hmm.
um and then, were you there when Cowbell brought up the point about having a desire to actually to learn a skill?
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of, um that has to come first before the skill is truly learned. I guess I was just thinking about my own son. He's 15, and how do we go about without it being a compulsory thing at this point in time, like by the schools, or how do we get kids interested in wanting to pick up something and do it themselves? Because I just don't feel, again, I'm just only going off of my opinion, which I get to experience with my current 15-year-old son and 13-year-old daughter. But I try to pay attention, and you know, I try to look around at what the other kids are doing, and I just don't see them going to the lawn mowing jobs, the working with your hands jobs, and the
Right.
things like that. And so, if it's not an overarching safetyism problem, and maybe that is part of the problem, but we can talk about gigantic ideas all day long. What, you know, what would be a practical way to get kids interested in working?
I mean, I think you have to see. I don't necessarily agree with what he said about that. I was a little short on time, so I didn't want to disagree and lead. Like, you know, I disagree with you and then jet. You know, but you think back.
Right.
So when you think about apprenticeship, we're talking about things that are kind of lost in today's society. Because in a true apprenticeship, you know, like say Braxton, you decided, you know, when he decided he was going to be the blacksmith, let's say that analogy kept coming up, right? Usually he didn't decide to be a blacksmith. The blacksmith needed an apprentice, and you sent him there because you knew that A, it was a job he would, you know, you were looking for something long term, and the town had a need for that. But it wasn't like kids weren't roaming around deciding like I'm going to be a doctor. You know, usually if your parent was a doctor, they set you up with an apprenticeship. But I don't think it was a choice thing. I think it was this is a person who who has a need, and I'm gonna put you in there to provide, because I need you to provide down the road. And I think that so I think that's kind of because in a true apprenticeship, you basically gave your child over to them, and like it's not like today where you think today if your kid goes to work at McDonald's and they come home and they're like, oh man, the manager, I I burned some customers' fries and the manager really got in me. Well, mom's up there the next morning, right? Like you can't talk to my kid that way, and our dad is, gonna pot nut the guy or something, and that's just not how. That's a thing that we've lost in our society. Is even like I see it a lot with dads and their sons in like coaching, right? Is turning your kid over to another coach who teaches maybe like a philosophy that you don't agree with, I mean, even with Cody, like there was years when Cody was playing basketball where I was like, they're just not putting him in the right situations. But I trusted that the guy knew what he was doing and he was enjoying himself. So it's like you have to kind of like it's very hard to separate yourself from that equation, right? And I think that's part of the apprenticeship thing is it's not necessarily about teaching somebody something that they it's I think it's not teaching somebody something it's not necessarily that they want to do it, but it's that you have a need and you know that's going to be a need, like you're fulfilling a need and you need somebody to keep fulfilling that need when you leave, right? I think that's like especially like take it to F3, right? If let's say when you're site queue, right? If you're queuing all the time and you're running everything, and then like we're not going to be able to exercise at some point, time is undefeated, right? At some point time is going to come for all of us. And if you haven't taken that person under your wing, apprenticeship for lack of a better term, if you haven't seen that there's going to be a need at some point down the road and develop somebody to fill that need, then it's just going to be a void. And I think in other times it was much more of a stark, if you didn't have horseshoes, you couldn't just jump on Temu or Amazon and have some guy in China make you some horseshoes. Like if your town didn't have a blacksmith, you were in deep trouble. The economy was in deep danger, right? And I think that was more of the way that people saw that there was a need to fill roles. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, no, you definitely make a lot of sense, and I think the danger is that there's so much choice and abundance
sure,
of opportunity, for
right,
young men, um,
right.
where that's
But that's the thing
historically
that
never been
you
the
as a
case.
dad, you have to point out it's like when you go to a buffet, right? There's 10,000 things to eat, but you have to show them the fuel from the gummy bears and the candy, right? So it's like a job, people say, oh, like Mike Rowe has a really good article that he wrote probably 10 years ago about people following their passions and what a terrible idea that is. And he's like, because your passion, like if your passion, your passion could be to be an artist, right? But if you just paint on the sidewalk and sell your paintings, you're not going to be able to provide. You're not going to be, you're not going to reach your full potential. And it's like finding roles, finding holes in the economy that needs you, and doing that, and then because your life is so much more than the time that you put in at work.
Well, and it's so much more than just you, because now you're tapping into the sacrificial element. Like you said earlier, like your town needs a blacksmith. Your
Right.
community needs you, your neighborhood needs, and you could go on and on and on. And again, not to discourage the artist 100%, because there may be that shoe that fits that person. Again, I think the proper alignment is a sacrificial alignment, that you're emptying yourself not for your own sake. Um, and again, I do think, in the age of influencers and the BS that we see online, and these kids are looking into smartphones, that they're just swarmed with all of these decisions that are debilitating now. That 70 years ago, kids didn't have to make that decision. It was maybe either left or military, or I'm going to go learn this trade. Like, I'm
Right.
going to go to college, or I'm going to learn this trade. It was um, a lot easier to grasp. And now, with just the abundance of quote unquote opportunity, which I don't even know if we can call it that, because it's that. Um, well, it becomes that cage with velvet bars a little bit of too. Again, because we're never truly. There's a lot of the thing that we don't have nowadays is deprivation. Not everybody's back is put against the wall to feed their family. Not everybody's back is put against the wall to keep a roof over their head. I know that that is the case for some people, but majority on the majority, it's not. And
Right.
so, then all of a sudden you get this free space, so to speak, to create yourself or find yourself, that we hear often. And um,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's actually built, if that's what we're built for, to be introspecting ourselves. We've talked about that before, that the more you look at yourself, the more you um, analyze yourself, the more depressed you get. And that's technical, because it's like, I don't know if we're supposed to be zeroing in on just our own self and our own needs.
Right.
Um, that probably isn't going to be the best bet for a healthy life. When it On the alternative, you have the sacrificial element, which is being able to participate and be a part of something, bigger than yourself. But yeah, again, all of that sounds good in cookie cutter philosophy language, but boots on the ground type of a thing. I just don't see the oh man, I guess I don't know how to articulate. I don't know. I'm just probably having a personal struggle with putting it into action, just for myself too. And but I'm really thinking about my kids, and
Yeah.
the direction that they need to go. I heard something on a podcast or whatever, that the 2010 mind can't comprehend 2024. And it really, like, kind of startled me, and it made me think about just how fast the world has changed. I
Sure.
don't know if there's any truth to the fact that a 2010 mind, but it just is. I guess the point is, you've got to stay up and up, and you've got to realize what are the opportunities today, what are the things to avoid today, so on and so forth. But
Can you hear that? It's
a little bit.
my,
Why?
my work computer sounds like a jet taking off. Yeah. I think that's something too that it's like a fan in the PC. Just it sounds like an airplane taking off.
Yeah, I can just subtly hear it.
One thing that's really working against, this kind of goes back to the whole apprenticeship thing too,
I
where you do stuff and not every apprenticeship was successful, right? Because you might be terrible at something, right? I mean, the problem with I think a lot of kids today struggle. I see this again. This goes back to just dealing with kids and playing sports. Is kids today, they can pick up a controller and they can be you know playing soccer at a high level in a week, and you can be an expert marksman in a week. And I think even like people our ages, we see people, you see the end result, but you don't see all the work that's gone into it. And then you see, like, do you want to put all that work? Like, you want to get to that level, but do you really want to do like all the work? Because there's so much like shortcutting, and I think that's part of what used to be in the apprenticeship too. You know, where Dredd talks about, like, there is a value in going to a job and being crappy and being the guy who has to, you know, I don't know. I've done jobs before where I literally had no idea what was going on, like how to do it. Like I remember when I first started doing construction, like I had barely, like, if anything that I helped my dad with, he immediately like took over and was like, because I was doing it wrong. So I could barely like pound a nail or turn a screw, right? But when I got on the construction site and all they allowed me to do was go get a load of materials and bring it to this spot and unload it or carry all this stuff. You know, you're a laborer. Well, then all of a sudden the plumber says, well, hey, why don't you solder this joint? Or why don't you connect these pipes and then I'll check it. And it's that buildup and that going from no knowledge to gaining knowledge. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think we shortcut that. Like, I know, going back to the example of my dad, he wanted stuff not to be messed up. But in the messing stuff up, there's learning, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
we
that's a
kind of
hard
touched on
thing
that the
to,
other day. Shooting for perfection instead of
yeah,
shooting for what's real.
right.
And um yeah, there was something you said there and I just lost it, but rehash what were you just saying?
I guess I was saying let people screw stuff up because they learn that way. You know, you don't the process is really important. Like we see the
Yeah,
end of the
yeah, yeah, it's the
process, but
process.
I mean, you see that in fitness, right? You see some guy, he shows up and he bench presses 300 pounds, and you slap 300 pounds on the bar, and it's like, well, that guy, I bet that guy took steroids, or that guy's probably doing this or doing that. You know, you don't see the every morning for 10 years that that guy was up there at 5 a.m. starting with the
Right.
bar. You know, he started with the bar and then he put 5 pounds on it and then he put 10 pounds on it and he worked, right? And that's the process that I think I don't know, we don't no one films the process, right? They all film the end
They
result.
only film the peaks of the
Right.
flux. We
Right.
talk about that a lot, and then by doing that, you don't understand that there might be bad days and weeks, maybe even months that you just go through. Like with the job, the apprenticeship. You could be sweeping floors for the first 3 months, and
Right.
that's the thing about learning is it's so funny and how we learn because if you do think about it, most of our learning is experiential. It's through the journey, it's through the mistakes, it's through the things that we could have never anticipated. That's
Right.
actually where the learning always seems to hide itself. And it's really difficult to then kind of lay out a structure, plan ahead a structure of how to learn and escape all of those quote unquote learning moments. That would
And,
be it'd be the almost opposite. But we do that to ourselves. We do that with the idea of getting the how-to book or the YouTube video or the hanging drywall for dummies. We
right.
trick ourselves into thinking that we're just going to read the quick points and then do the job and not learn while doing the job because that's it's just naive because you're going to learn and we mistake that learning for pain. That's what then happens. Frustration, anger, all of those negative emotions we reclassify as negative emotions instead of just, oh wow, this is interesting. The mud that I
Right.
tried using for this drywall didn't even stick and now it's clumpy or whatever, and it's like, that could be a whole moment to be curious and learn about instead of being frustrated or angry about. But it all has to do with the intention you put towards that. Like, am I on a journey, or am I somewhere where I think I already know that I'm at? Because that's when you all of a sudden can get walloped, and it's like, well, I thought I knew how this was going to go. We see that in the F3 with people in some of their cues. They think they know
Right.
exactly how the beatdown is going to go, and then all it takes is a stiff breeze or an FNG to show
Right.
up, and the next thing you know, they got punched in the face, as Mike Tyson would say.
Right. Well, that's what I said too about mimicry. People see stuff work and then they think, well, I'll just do that and it'll work for me, you know? I think that happens a lot with like, I think that really happened a lot in the 80s where we saw people go to college and then all of a sudden they got the job and they were making $1 billion and, all of a sudden everybody is going to college and it's not, it becomes just like a cookie cutter thing instead of a thing that actually we're just mimicking something that worked and thinking it's going to work for everybody. And I think that's I guess
Right,
that's human nature because you see it in every level of society. That's why people write books that say, "Hey, mimic this thing that I did and you'll get the same result." And I think that's really something too to I don't know. I just think we've lost the value in being bad at stuff because we live in a society that constantly, like I said, we all film the great, we film when we catch the 20-pound catfish, but we don't film the 6 times we cast our lure in a tree and the things that we really learned from, the time how many times I've thrown a lure out that I didn't tie right and you watch the lure go flying off to one part of the lake and your line's going the other way.
right.
Yeah, nobody films that, right? So if you're a kid and you're living in a society that's kind of, web based and you're looking at all you see is everybody succeeding and you're like, well, I tried that and I didn't. And I don't know. I think we need to really. You almost need to promote the like doing the things that you suck at until you get good at them. Not just like, well, I tried that and I'm terrible. I, I did that a lot. You build up something in your mind, you go to it, and you're terrible at it, and then you just like you can make any excuse. Like that teacher, that instructor that day was terrible, or that guy's an idiot. It's you never.
Well, you
I
were
don't know.
onto you. You were talking a couple weeks ago about one of the easier way to do that. I think is to focus on tangible things, things that are obviously mucked up once you make a mistake. See, a lot of our communication, a lot of our life is just digital, and so these kids can hide. All you have to do is delete your account and then
Right,
start over again. And so, but when you're working with a piece of machinery and you make a mistake, you don't just get to delete your account and start over again.
right,
And so I think when you actually are working tangible, and that's why we always do talk about trades, we kind of go back to the whole idea of picking up a shovel because it's real and it's
right,
my kids' life that can be bullshitted with in our own lives with social media and with technology. You were onto something with the tangible stuff. You can't BS. That's why again the keyboard warrior goes away when it's in the street and a face-to-face
right,
conversation because then it becomes tangible, and you can see the difference in how you react to things that are quote unquote tangible and things that are not. um,
right,
I think it provides space to BS and to not tell the truth, essentially.
right. Yeah,
Cool, man. Well, hey, we're at 30 minutes, so let us let us discontinue for today. But yeah, hopefully we can make a practice of just kind of doing a virtual conversation or two, and try to get
yeah,
some of the other guys to jump on board.
Sounds
and
good.
that way, I'm just gonna keep this unlisted on my YouTube channel, but it'll be you have the link, and so if there's ever anything you want to go back to, or what were we talking about, or what was that book that he said? I thought that might be of value too, to kind of have these on recorded history. So
Sounds good.
awesome, man. Well, thanks
All
for joining me, and have a great day, dude.
right. Thanks for the invite, man. Love you,
You
dude. Have a
bet. Love
great
you, dude.
day. All right. Bye.
See you, man.